How strong do you need to be a pro? That's the question we're going to answer today. We're going to speak to a pro coach about the kind of data he looks at to identify future professionals. This year I took part in the Zwift Academy, and now we're going to see how my data compares to those who have made it into the semi-finals. The workouts for the semi-final are available to everyone to have a go at on Zwift. So I'm going to have a go in a minute and we'll see how I shape up against the competition. Elliot, you've been crunching the numbers for the Zwift Academy. What have you found?
Across the two academies, there was over 60,000 participants, and ultimately we're trying to filter this down to 10 semi-finalists, each for the men and for the women's academy. And ultimately from that we narrow it down to 3 finalists to go to the training camp.
Yeah.
With the ultimate prize, I guess, if you want to call it that, is a spot on the respective teams.
Okay.
The Canyon SRAM for the women's, and next year we'll rebrand to NTT, but Dimension Data's under 23 team.
So how do you filter down the riders into the semis?
Firstly, you have to be under 23, so that filters out a lot.
Yeah, does indeed.
That's the first step. But then from there, we start to drill into the numbers, into the figures.
Right.
So throughout the academy, there's a series of tests, workouts and races and things like this that we're looking at from the riders. So it's about pinpointing and filtering the strongest candidates.
Really. Right, okay. So Elliot, what are you looking for?
So someone strong,
right,
is the short answer. It's a case of filtering the strongest riders for their respective time points. So for example, the 20-second, 1 minute, 4 minute FTP. I mean, as a real benchmark list, if you start with FTP as an easy one, generally speaking, you're looking at, to be a pro, anything above 5 watts per kilo is a ballpark figure. 1 minute, closer to 10 watts per kilo. And then it kind of obviously deteriorates, the power to weight deteriorates through the time curve. But yeah, 1 minute, 10 watts per kilo, 3 to 5 minutes, you're looking at kind of 7-8 watts per kilo, and 6 to 7 for 5-10 plus. So that's an easy way to filter the riders. We're looking at who's strongest at these time points, and these are kind of the time points that we've identified as being critical to success in cycling, both on the road and on Zwift, or racing in general. At the top end, it's quite a broad overview of who's the strongest at various time points, and then as we drill into the semi-finals, we get into more specifics of what type of rider we're looking for and what type of riders we're looking at as well. Okay. This year we have a mix of climbers, sprinters, track riders, pursuitists. You get a whole spectrum of various strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah. So, I mean, watts per kilo is the be-all and end-all, isn't it, really?
Yes and no. The shorter, generally speaking, the shorter the duration, the less impact watts per kilo, or the less emphasis on watts per kilo there is. For example, generally speaking, if you're doing a 10-second sprint at 1,000 watts, 1,000 watt on the flat, 1,000 watts at 60 kilos for 70 kilos is a much smaller gap than 300 watts for a 70 kilo rider versus a 50 kilo rider. So yeah, the shorter the time point, and obviously terrain is important, the less impact on watts per kilo. But we only had this year, we only had one 20-second test. Yeah. Generally, the time frames were 1 minute up.
Okay, so this year you've had a 20-second test.
Yep.
So obviously that's for the sprinters. What discipline is a 1 minute rider good at?
Pretty much, if you're racing, especially in Europe, if you're racing at a continental level, you're going to be producing 1 minute max power efforts multiple times in a race. Mm-hmm. Whether that's to chase a break, to attack, to survive, to get back onto the bunch after going for a pee or getting a bottle, whatever it might be, you have to be able to produce those big numbers.
So could you give us an idea of a rider in the pro peloton who's got a great 1 minute power?
Yes, I mean, someone like, in terms of watts per kilo, someone like Alaphilippe, Valverde, there would be those sorts of punchy riders that can hit 11 watts per kilo,
right,
and hold that for a minute, and then drop down into
that's
7.5 watts per kilo for 5 minutes to finish the effort.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Again.
Right, so I took part in the Zwift Academy this year, and I didn't get into the semi-finals.
Sorry.
Never mind, these things happen. I'm about 20 years too old anyway, and about 10 kilos too heavy probably. But can you tell me why I didn't get in there?
Yeah, obviously age is the thing, but if we were to just drill into your numbers, and let's take, so you actually completed one of the semi-final workouts. So if we look at that as that was the 2 by 8 minutes.
That's correct.
Time trial type interval. So we take your 2 efforts and we can compare that to, say, some of the other semi-finalists and what we're looking for.
Okay.
You produced 370 watts, give or take, for both efforts. So they were pretty closely spaced.
Right.
Which is good. We do the 2 efforts to see what the decrease in power is like, fatigue, recovery, etc. But also how you pace it. And I think you had maybe 10, 15 watts more.
Yeah, I think there must be a tendency to underpace the first effort because you've got the second effort weighing, heavily over you, haven't you? So yeah, I probably did hold back a little bit.
So for example, let's take this 8-minute effort at 370 watts. It's about 4.5 watts per kilo. The numbers themselves actually aren't too far. Absolute power isn't actually too far off what some of the younger guys, some of the semi-finalists are putting out. However, weight comes into it.
Yeah.
Obviously, these guys are maybe 20 kilos less or so. So if you're taking, for example, your 370 watts and saying, okay, now you need to be competitive at that same time point and maintain the same weight, you would need to put close to 600 watts for 8 minutes, which is difficult.
Might be able to do that for a minute, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if we're looking at FTPs, the best guys are putting out probably 370 watts or so for an hour at about 60 kilos, 65 kilos.
That is very impressive. That's so strong, isn't it? That's ridiculous. Okay, Elliot, you've got access to all my Zwift data. What kind of a rider am I? Where are my strengths and weaknesses?
So looking at your power curve, I'd say the type of rider that you are would fall kind of more into like a diesel engine with a good kick, with a good little turbo boost if you need it. Yeah, so like your 15, 20, 25 minute power is pretty good. Power to weight is pretty good. We're talking kind of 4.5 watts per kilo for yourself, and your sprint's pretty decent as well. However, I would say an area for improvement is your kind of upper aerobic, your VO2 max type intervals, type power. So kind of 3 minutes, 6 minutes, there's a bit of a window there. You can see in your power curve, it kind of drops off pretty steeply after 1 minute, or up kind of after about 30 seconds or so. And that's where that upper aerobic VO2 max element takes over. I would say as a way to improve that is to polarize your training more. So it sounds like to me you do a lot of racing on Zwift.
Yeah.
You do a lot of hard training, maybe 4 or 5 sessions, and it's so common with normal people, working people. They go on, they've got maybe an hour, and they go and they kill themselves on Zwift, and that works. And you can see that works. You're strong in those time points.
Yeah.
However, it will get you to a point where you'll then stagnate. Often people don't like the sound of it, but you have to go slower to go faster as well. Yeah. And that's the difference really the biggest difference between full-time professionals and the hobby riders.
Because you've got more time.
You can ride 5 hours, you can commit to that.
So when you say you need to go slower to go faster, it's just, ride at, you can do a sort of 3 hour ride at
100 watts.
Yeah. And that actually helps.
Yeah.
In
it
the
sounds
long run.
so counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But it's so important.
Yeah.
To build the foundation for the hard work is put in with the slow stuff.
That's to add the mitochondria.
Cardiovascular improvement, stroke volume, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And then the offshoot of that is if you're riding easy, The next day, when you do a hard session,
can go very
you can
hard.
go hard.
Yeah.
And that's to develop that top end. You have to go into the red. And whilst racing on Zwift or doing a hard session 5 days in a row, you're going hard every day. The sensation of effort is high.
Yeah.
But actually, often the power may not be as high as it could be if you were fresher. 80% of your rides easy, 20% hard. But that 20% hard
has to be
is hard.
Yeah.
That's the question I think every rider should ask themselves is what are they doing it for?
Yeah.
Because I'm also a bit like you as well. Like if I go on Zwift, I want to go hard, I want to enjoy it, and I want to race, and I want to kick some people's asses.
Yeah, basically.
And get
That's
my
what
ass
it's all
kicked
about.
in the process.
Yeah.
And I enjoy it, and I get to a level where you can be fit, and you can be strong, and you can be competitive.
Yeah.
And enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely.
Whereas if you want to improve from that point of maybe stagnation, you need to change the mentality of why are you do, or you need to ask the question of why are you doing it? Are you doing this because you enjoy the process of training, or are you doing this to get stronger?
So we've been talking about the men's side of things. How about the women? How do their numbers compare?
The women's Zwift Academy for Canyon SRAM is not age limited, whereas the men's team is only for under 23s. Women's World Tour racing is different to men's in the sense that it's often actually raced at a lot higher intensity for a shorter period. 1, 3, 5, 10-minute powers are really important. If we do take it, let's say watts per kilo, I mean you're talking 7, 8 watts per kilo for 1 minute, 5 to 6 watts per kilo, closer to 10.
So you know, a woman looking to get into the semi-final would be putting out how many watts for 20 minutes?
High 4.6, 4.7 watts per kilo as a 20-minute effort.
Okay.
5.5. I mean, the best female cyclists in the world, your Van der Breggens, Van Vleutens, are pushing probably 5.5, 6 watts per kilo for 20 minutes, which is
very strong.
Exceptional.
Yeah.
I mean, you compare that's you drop them into any race anywhere, and they would be competitive.
Up there, Okay, so what could people do at home to see how they compare to the semi-finalists? So
I'd say if you're going to choose one workout, the 2x8 minute test as part of the semi-final workouts in this year's academy is probably the best benchmark to use. It's a really good effort, and it's also a good training session in itself. If you can hold 6 to 7 watts per kilo for 8 minutes, then you're doing well.
Right.
Yourself is about 4.5, which is very good, which is probably on the upper end of average. But it still is strong. For example, if in your case you've seen that your 78% of your 8 minute doesn't quite match up with what your FTP is, that highlights that you probably need to do more work at that top end. So for example, if you're 20, 30 watts off what it says it should be, then go away now and spend 4, 5, 6 weeks working on pushing that top end up. You'll find your FTP probably won't suffer, but you can push that ceiling up a bit higher, which will then give you a bit of scope as well now to then push your FTP higher too. And it's always a good way to kind of test and retest and improve. Yeah.
All right, okay, so the semi-finalists are in situ. What is going to happen with them next?
So they've got a busy 2 weeks coming up with their workouts. So now we're comparing the riders to our current crop, our current roster of riders.
Of World Tour riders?
Of under 23 and also World Tour. So we're looking at how they compare to our current squad and how they would fit into the team. We're looking for what type of rider we want to fit into our team setup, our race setup, and also their potential. Are they a bit rough around the edges? Are they already at the top of their game and with scope to improve or not significantly? And this is the beauty of the academy, is that you can unearth talent that may not have otherwise shone through the traditional channels.
There may be natural talent there, for power, All right, thanks a lot, Elliot. Okay, let us know how your data compares in the comments. Thanks very much for watching.